There are more people joining us, so I'm going to start giving a little bit of time to see when we reach a stable number. Okay. It's really appreciated your time. This is a topic that it's been hot topic right now, and we would like to give some insights from PrimeiroPay and from Wobeser y Sierra. So my name is Gabriela. I'm the head of legal of PrimeiroPay, and joining this webinar with me, we have Rocio Perez, who's our head of LATAM and take care of Mexico, Jorge Diaz and Fernando Moreno, which are lawyers in Wobeser y Sierra. They are our tax experts, and they have been guiding us through these new rules. So I would just start by giving a little bit of background on this. Letty, if you could put the next slide. I just would like to let you know that, well, VAT law, it's not something new. The VAT tax is not something new, and it's also not new in LATAM. This is a tax that is due upon goods and service being rendered in LATAM in general. And what is new, and this is a trend that we have been seeing in the whole Latin America region, is the way of collecting such taxes. So while in the beginning it was upon the buyer, the local resident, to collect and pay such taxes, now the rules are shifting to allow the foreign merchant to be the one responsible to collect and pay such tax. And this is because normally we know the natural persons, they face more difficulties in regards to collecting and paying such tax. So it was ineffective in that end to have a VAT charge when the obligations of collecting them would follow on the buyer. And again, I'm saying this in a more general background. I will leave Mexico to our experts, but just to give a little bit of an update. So for example, we have that from this year in Ecuador and Paraguay, they started just now in January 1st to shift this responsibility to the foreign merchant. And now we are seeing Mexico and Chile from June 1st applying this change of rationale as well. And they are in each country, there are different rates. As you can see in the map, you can find the general VAT rate. So it's possible that for certain services, certain products, and certain situations, this is not the applicable rate, but this is more of the general rate applicable on each country. But each country also has different rules. So they specify which services are the one that are expected to apply VAT. Some of those countries are very specific, and they say, for example, in Uruguay, audiovisual services and licensing of intangible assets, they should be taxed with VAT. While we have more broad regulation in Colombia, for example, that says general service unless it is exempted. And we can also see certain trends of how to collect and pay in each country. While in Colombia, again, for instance, you could adhere a specific withholding mechanism with acquirers and other payment players. We have other countries that give more freedom of how to collect, and or on the other hand, more restricted as well. And just to wrap up, well, the only country that stands out of this trend is Brazil. And I can say that as a Brazilian myself. It's always a country that is a bit different and doing its own thing. But in Brazil, we do not have VAT. We have actually a collection of taxes that together, they perform the role of VAT. So Brazil is, I could say, one step behind, because first they need to unify such taxes in order to later decide how to employ and charge foreign merchants. So yes, but this is a trend in LATAM. We know other regions in the world already passed by the shift of how to collect and how to pay. But this is something fairly new in LATAM and a hot topic in the moment that we would like to share with you. So I'm going to pass now to Fernando and to Jorge. Fernando first to tell us a little bit more about what's going to happen in Mexico specifically.
Hello, everybody. Thank you to PrimeiroPay and to Rocio and Gabriela to organize this with Wobeser y Sierra. I just want to give you an introduction about Wobeser y Sierra. That we are a firm in Mexico, founded in 1986. We have more than 16 different practices. We are 15 partners and more than 80 associates. We are one of the largest firms in Mexico, and we have the honor to this webinar with PrimeiroPay, and it's a very relevant issue because we are talking about one subject that has been very complex and has been and the OCDE are making pressure to cover these issues. Mexico took the decision to implement to tax the digital services for final consumption through the VAT, and Jorge is the expert in relation with this subject, and I will leave this the microphone to Jorge in order that he explain what happened in Mexico. Jorge, you have your okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And first of all, we're going to preliminarily talk about what topics we're going to discuss briefly. It's a complex matter, but I think we're gonna discuss about the important things. And if you have further questions, at the end you will have our contact information, and please feel free to contact us to elaborate on any questions you may have. First of all, I would like to give a background regarding how this all started. This all started back in 2013 with the G20 and the OECD addressing tax avoidance issues regarding diverse tax matters worldwide. And a group was created in order to analyze how to challenge this and that the base erosion and profit shifting that taxpayers were performing was stopped or minimized. So there are several actions in that project. Action 1 is referred to digital economy, exactly what we are dealing with here, and how it is the best way to tax these services or goods being sold in this way, which is far more advanced than the local regulations and even the OECD have provided for. No, it is normal, it happens, but there have been certain developments on this from 2013 to now, and several countries have anticipated even before the OECD concluded its analysis. Mexico is one of those countries, but there are others, as Gabriela mentioned as well. Some of the European countries and some Latin American countries before Mexico, and to a lot more focusing in the national background in Mexico, we recently have a change in government, and this was the focus from the beginning to do something about the digital services and how to tax them. There were certain initiatives in the past to try to include regulations in some rules, but nothing in the law per se. So this has happened. The new provisions of the value-added tax were published back in December 2019 and referred to the taxing of digital services, which we are going to talk more about in the following slide. So can we have a next slide, please? Yeah, this is what I was talking about, the Action 1 and the G20 and OECD working on the main challenges regarding tax avoidance and specifically for the digital economy. Can I have the next one, please? Yeah, the decree including the new provisions for the value-added tax was a new chapter completely in the value-added tax. Previously, services that were performed by residents abroad in the digital framework were considered as an importation of services, which at the end consumer in Mexico, the individual had to pay to the tax authorities. This never happened, and this was the way to do so because there was no provision to allow the Mexican tax authorities to get to the foreigner rendering the service. So this has changed, and now the service is considered to be rendered in Mexico when the recipient is a Mexican tax resident, or not only Mexican tax resident. There are several criteria to be met. For example, if the recipient has provided a telephone, an address, or the IP location corresponds to Mexico, then it is considered that the service is rendered in Mexico, and of course, it implies several obligations to be complied by the resident abroad. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, it is provided in the value-added tax that the services that are going to be impacted are those provided through internet or other network, consisting in downloading or accessing diverse multimedia content. There are certain exceptions, such as electronic books, newspapers, and magazines, and intermediation services is as well the focus of these modifications. Services rendered through online clubs, dating pages, distance learning tests, and exercises. It is a wide menu of options that the tax authority could consider that these obligations arises, and basically consists in having the resident abroad collecting the value-added tax at the 16% tax rate for general digital services provided and paying them to the tax authority. This is an obligation for the resident abroad. And later we're going to be analyzing how the resident abroad is going to be able, or how the tax authority in Mexico is envisioning the taxpayer abroad to be paying this amount. No, it's a practical issue. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, these new rules they were published back in December, but it was envisioned to enter into force next June 1, and as far as it goes, it will be that way. No extension is provided for yet by the tax authorities, and considering how the government had been reacting to these tax matters, we don't expect to have an extension to comply with these provisions. No. In general, it is important to distinguish general digital services, which is the ones that I mentioned, downloading images, audio, and the digital intermediation services that is rendered through platforms. And the objective in this second one is to tax individuals in Mexico that sell goods or services through these platforms provided by residents abroad. This is again a way to collect taxes that were not being paid, and focusing and obligating the resident abroad, which is easier because we're talking generally about big companies with big budgets and that can handle this. And it's easier to focus on these companies than to focus on each individual that is selling its goods or services through those platforms. No, there are several obligations correlative with this presupuestos included in the law. And can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, as we mentioned, and as Gabriela mentioned, the general tax rate in Mexico is 16%. And I have discussed this is applicable for services that are provided through web applications or content in format through internet or other network. This is very wide. This is that are mainly automated, as most digital services providers, may or may not require minimal human intervention, and that a consideration exists. No, if a consideration exists for the service being provided to the recipient in Mexico of the service, then the resident abroad performing these actions should pay attention to the obligations that are arising in Mexico. No, can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. As mentioned previously, the services in the past, when they were rendered by residents abroad, it was considered as an importation of services, and the recipient was obligated to pay this. Never happened. So this is not only talking about recipients located in Mexico, but even if the recipient is located abroad, but fits one of these hypotheses, this means that a domicile was established, provided to the service provider in Mexico, or the payment is made for an intermediary located in Mexico, the IP address is in Mexico, or the telephone provided in the registration with the provider corresponds to one in Mexico, then we of course have to consider that this obligation needs to be followed. It's a very wide, and of course can fall into an individual that is not a resident in Mexico. It could be difficult, but it could happen because it's wide, and the hypotheses to do so are wide. No, the main obligations that arise for the service provided abroad is to register before the federal taxpayer registry in Mexico and provide a domicile within the country. This is for the tax authorities to be able to review that the obligations of the resident abroad are being fulfilled correctly, and of course that the payment of the corresponding tax is being done in the way that it is provided. It could be difficult to fulfill some obligations of the resident abroad if the tax authorities did not have a legal representative in the country to go for and question, no? And this is the reason. They have as well to offer and collect the corresponding VAT, 16%, calculated and paid, and provide the tax authorities with certain information regarding its transactions in the previous month, and of course issue the digital invoice to the recipient. In Mexico, we have a very sophisticated system of issuing invoices, and this allows the taxpayers to have a really close eye on if the taxpayers are complying with its obligations or not. This invoice that this specific provision is referring to is not the same as a Mexican entity issues, because of course we are talking about obligations that will fall to a resident abroad. These are simplified, we can call it receipts of the transaction, but as well need to have certain requirements. Otherwise, some penalties may be applicable to the resident abroad. So it's important to take into consideration. Can we have the next one, please? Yeah, and first we talked about the two important groups that are the focus of the tax authorities. One is the general intermediation services, and digital services, as we mentioned in the past, and the digital intermediation services is the other one. These are the obligations corresponding to intermediation services being rendered by residents abroad through platforms in which recipients in Mexico sell goods or services. This is to effectively collect the tax that such individuals are receiving through those platforms based on the sales they perform. So there are certain obligations for the resident abroad that it has to be published on its website. The price of the value being sold, the VAT for those goods or services being offered. And of course, if we are talking about a recipient in Mexico, there is an obligation to withhold, of course. We are focusing in this presentation on VAT because it is the most specific provision that was being amended, and it is the most common that residents abroad being rendering services will fall under. But of course, there is a correlative withholding obligation regarding income tax. Let's just get the idea that if a service provider resident abroad is providing such service through a platform in which a recipient in Mexico is selling goods or services, then a withholding obligation exists and should be considered. Usually, this is the 16% tax rate is applicable only for those individuals that do not provide the service provider with its tax ID. This is, of course, for letting know the tax authorities which clients of the service provider are not complying with its tax obligations, and of course to make a burden to those individuals that are not willing to provide their tax ID on a greater withholding. They will have a withholding of 16% of VAT instead of the 50% that was provided for this intermediation sale. No? Can we have the next slide, please? Of course, these related obligations, as in the general services mentioned before, an evidence of the withholding has to be issued by the resident abroad. This is not the same as well as the invoice regularly issued by a Mexican entity and has to comply with certain requirements. In addition to the obligations that we have discussed, regarding intermediation services, the tax authorities also require the service provider to file certain information regarding its clients to the tax authorities on a regular basis. This is as well to know which taxpayers are complying with its tax obligations and to focus on them. No? Can we have the next one, please? Yeah. Of course, this is a matter that is not completely clear yet. It's a new issue in Mexico. The tax government, as we have been discussing regarding tax matter, has not been very clear in the recent months. So let's see how this matter evolves. But for example, regarding the obligation to pay the tax that was collected corresponds to the resident abroad. For these purposes, it is provided that the resident abroad may be able to pay in whichever country the corresponding amounts, because the tax authority in Mexico will have bank accounts open in every country. Of course, it has not occurred. There is no rule yet. I don't see that there are any bank accounts to fulfill this obligation so far in other countries. But this is something that needs to be clarified in the future if they intend the resident abroad fulfilling directly this obligation. No? They haven't mentioned anything about the legal representative being able to do so in Mexico directly if possible. Of course, we have many issues in Mexico related to tax filings, reports, returns are done via the tax authority's webpage. But this has to be adjusted as well and clarified. We expect some clarification in the near future and hope this is finished. Of course, if it is possible, the payment to be done by the legal representative in Mexico, we need specifics on how it is going to be done. The legal representative, is important to mention, is responsible for all issues that the tax authorities may question to the resident abroad, as it's the one that can be contacted directly, even if some penalties are applicable, or if the tax authorities consider that the value-added tax corresponding to the previous month was not paid and calculated correctly, then of course they will go with the legal representative appointed and request such clarifications. At the end, the sanctions or penalties that were envisioned for non-compliance with these new modifications to the value-added tax law are not specific, and so we can tell that the applicable general penalties to all kinds of entities are applicable to non-compliance by the residents abroad. These are monetary penalties. But of course, if we are dealing with challenging by the tax authorities in the amount of VAT that was paid or is to be paid by the resident abroad, then we have an issue, because the one that is going to be questioned is the legal representative appointed in Mexico, and this is a topic as well for entities, or if the resident abroad does not have a subsidiary in Mexico, it would be complicated to have a legal representative accepting this kind of responsibility without the correlative administrative and economic increases. No? So this is basically what the modifications are all about. our recommendation is to focus on the specific services that are being rendered. If you fall under one of the digital services that were described previously, then of course please feel free to tell us. Or if you are not sure if intermediation rules apply to you as well, because it's important that the Mexican tax law, it's really tough when dealing with withholding obligations. This is really important. And so we want to make sure that there is not withholding obligations on your side, and be positive about that, and how to react if you consider you fall under one of the hypotheses mentioned throughout this presentation. But in general, this is the status as of now. We'll see how this develops from June 1. If there are any developments, of course, we will let you know. That's it, Gabriela, in general. There are some additional things that are in the slide that is currently being presented. This not has to do with the tax matter, but of course with commercial issues. No, if the VAT is going to be collected, then of course with your clients, you should adjust the corresponding agreements, send the newsletters that are applicable, and this kind of issues, no, that are not related strictly to tax matters, but are a consequence of the modifications made to the value-added tax law.
Thank you very much, Jorge, especially because we know it's a very dense topic, and to be able to go through it in such a small amount of time, that's incredible. Thank you very much for the explanation. I would let Rocio take from here. We already have some questions from the attendees, but due to the time, perhaps you can reach out to us directly. Specifically, there's one question from Javier about if software as a service is considered part of the service. I think it's good to have more information. Perhaps there are the contact details in the end, Javier, that you can contact directly to Jorge, Fernando, or me and Rocio, and we can for sure give a more direct response. But I will pass to Rocio so she can.
Thank you. Thank you all of you for your inputs. We all know that despite of being an exciting and full of potential market, Latin America and also Mexico can be very complex and challenging while dealing with new tax regulations, even more considering the current COVID scenario. So having such reliable partners such as Wobeser and Gabi working with us and navigating through this is priceless. So thank you very much for that. From our side, PrimeiroPay has been always committed to be not just a payment provider, but a local partner for our merchants in Mexico. So we have been working with our partners with some solutions for global merchants that are selling digital services and also making digital intermediation in Mexico from abroad, to help them to make the enforceability of this new provision as smooth as possible, and also making tailor-made solutions considering the type of services they are rendering, the company size, the industry, and also the level of autonomy that they want to have on this regard. So no matter what you will choose or how involved you want us to be, we will be hand by hand by you, putting or making available to you our local expertise and our local participation in the market, but also the experience and knowledge of our local partners to help you to make this transition, as I told you, as smooth as possible, but also assuring the continuity of your running business in Mexico. So we will be more than happy to help you via email, or you can contact us. The contacts will be in the presentation, and we will be more than happy to discuss this further with you. We do have a solution for each type of merchant that is participating in the Mexican market, and we will be more than happy to help you. So from my side, just thanking very much our partners, Gabi, and all the attendees to take out time for being with us here. And I don't know, thank you very much for your participation. I think from my side, it has been challenging, but nothing that we cannot step for. So thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Keep safe. I don't know if anyone can would like to add something else?
Yeah, I would just also thank everybody. I think I'm glad we were able to do everything in 30 minutes. That was a challenge that we put ourselves to, because we know that tax matters are very complex. Again, feel free to reach out to us, and please, thank you. We hope everybody has a good day or a good evening, depending where you are located. And we would like to thank especially Jorge and Fernando for joining us and sharing with us their expertise.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye. Thank you. Keep safe,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.